One of the things that I want to talk about was avoidance behavior today. And I'm just gonna read this to y'all. Can anybody take a guess what avoidance behavior is?
I don't think you're avoiding something.
Alright, let me say this. True avoidance behavior involves the complete avoidance of the feared social situation. For example, someone afraid of public speaking. Alright? They might drop a class in which he has to give a speech, change jobs to avoid giving presentations, or fail to show up for an event such as a wedding. Okay, that's just an example. Alright? Escape. When total avoidance is possible. So these are the type of avoidance behavior. Okay? Escape. When total avoidance is impossible, escape behaviors may be used as a means of dealing with feared situations. Escape involves leaving or escaping from a feared social or performance situation. Some examples of escape including leaving a gathering early, walking out of the middle of a speech, or hiding in a restroom during a dinner party. That's like escape. I don't want to deal with this. Partial avoidance is when neither avoidance nor escape are possible. Partial avoidance, also known as safety behaviors, may be used to alleviate feelings of anxiety during social or performance situations. Safety behaviors generally limit or control your experience of a situation. Safety behaviors might include such things as avoiding crossing your arms to hide shaking, drinking or doing drugs, daydreaming, or sitting in the back of the classroom. Avoidance maintains anxiety. The problem with avoidance behaviors is that they maintain the symptoms of anxiety. If you always avoid giving speeches, or if you only give speeches without making eye contact, your anxiety about giving a speech will never diminish. Avoidance behavior. The reason why that stood out to me, let me put this up here, is because I think a lot of times in the black community we practice avoidance behavior. Or I should say in the African American community. Can you give me an example of what you think avoidance behavior is? In the African American community. I'll give you a good example of avoidance behavior. You watching the news and you see something going on in your community on the east side, and you live on the west side, and you just change the channel and act like it's not a big deal in your own community, as though it can't happen to you. All right.
So the other day I was, for Father's Day I went home to Canton to visit my parents, and I was driving with my friend, and I noticed a police car was stopped and they were talking to two African American teens. And I said something to my friend because I wanted them to slow down, because growing up in Canton I know that certain things do happen.
Right.
And that I want to make sure that these teens are okay, because they didn't look like they were doing anything wrong. And I didn't want the police officer to be,
racist.
And my friend continued to talk and kind of like speed it up a little bit. That's avoiding.
You think that was avoidance behavior?
I think it is, because they're avoiding the situation, like ignoring what could possibly be happening.
Right. Well, I think in that situation, it's not necessarily avoidance behavior. Avoidance behavior is if you want to. This is what I would, assume. Avoidance behavior would have been if you want to talk about the situation. Or let's say she starts speeding up. Was she African American?
The person I was with, yeah.
Okay, let's say she starts speeding up as though that can't happen to her. Now, to me, that would have been practicing avoidance behavior. If you told her to slow down, you're more conscious about what can happen as an African American person in your city. So you say, hey, I need you to slow down because I'm conscious of how they treat African American people in my city. You're not practicing avoidance behavior at that point. Okay? If your friend decided to speed up, avoid the situation, she's not conscious that the police can pull her over also, or she has the attitude that if they do pull me over, I'm not going to get treated like the two gentlemen, African American gentlemen that they pulled over. To me, that would be avoidance behavior. Okay? When it comes to our history, African American people like to practice avoidance behavior. Because anything that reflects Africa, anything that reminds them of the past, we try to avoid because we want to be something else. I'm going to give you a good example. If I'm talking to somebody and I ask them, what are you mixed with? They say, oh, I'm mixed with white and Indian, and I'm mixed with a little bit of Chinese, and of course, you know, I'm black. See what I'm saying? They name the other races before they would name African. And even the way they would say it shows me signs of avoidance behavior. In other words, when they mention the races that they're mixed with, they smile when they talk about the other races that they're mixed with. But their expression shows something different when talking about the African dissension. You see what I'm saying? That's avoidance behavior to me. Sometimes people might do that out of ignorance or what they've been taught. You know, we've been taught about ourselves the wrong way. You got to remember that too, which causes us to respond that way. And we still practicing avoidance behavior. When somebody like me come along and try to tell you about who you are and where you came from, and you say, oh, I don't want to hear that. You see what I'm saying? Because deep down inside, you know that you're going to hear some truth. And it might be opposite of what you've been taught on a normal basis. Am I making sense to you? Am I making sense? Yes? No? Okay. Got any questions? You think you are in control, but are you really? When you eat, do you really know the chemicals that are going in your body and how it affects your thought process? Are you really in control? Your brain is like a computer. Spiritual institutions don't want to talk about the brain as a computer because that is the one vessel many of them are designed to control. Okay? So we must know the physical aspects of the brain. Okay? So let's look at that. Let's look at the physical aspects of the brain before we leave. Can anybody name one of them? Well, let's name one. First of all, the brain is neural. And exactly, but what is it? When you're dealing with something neural, is dealing with what? Your nervous system.
Your receptor.
Okay. Everybody know about your nerves, right?
You can get on them.
Right. My mom used to actually get on her nerves.
I bet.
The next thing that the brain is
Sorry,
that's all right. The brain is chemical. Okay? And this deals with the actual matter of the brain. Okay? It deals with the actual matter of the brain. So your brain is neuro. And then you already know everything. You know, your whole body it has nerves in it, right? Your brain is chemical. And the last thing, your brain is electrical. And electricity is what ignites the brain. Okay? Now you know your body is made up of what? Your body itself is made up of water, matter, and electricity. Most of your body is what? Water. Y'all know that, right? Okay. So the brain is made up of the neural system, the chemical system, and the electrical system. These are the three things. These are the physical aspects of the brain. All right? Now, what controls the neural part of the brain? Which, out of these three, which ones have more of effect on the brain, you would say? One is ignited by the other one. Of course we need electricity because that's what ignites our whole body. If you don't have the proper electricity in your body, you're basically dead. Right? So we already know this is the turn off, turn on switch for the whole body and also for the brain. But what sets this off? And what sets this off to function properly?
Is it the chemical?
It's the chemical. Now, in our brain, and really in our whole body, but specifically in our brain, more so in our brain, what can affect the chemicals in our brain? More than anything. Huh? What we consume.
Well, that makes sense.
What we consume. You already have a certain amount of chemicals in your body already, correct? Depending on what you consume, depends on how your nervous system is going to function and how your electricity is going to function. Am I making sense? So if I put the wrong thing in my body, it might not go well with another chemical in my body, and it might set some things off for my body and my mind to run improperly. What are some of the things that we consume in our body? Generally, food. What else?
Drinks.
That's still considered food to me.
Alcohol.
That's still considered food to me. Smoking. Something other than something that you consume with, you know. So let's say smoking. Yeah, smoking. When you smoke, that have certain chemicals in it, correct? Certain things that you inhale. Because you were naming things that you consume with your mouth. But you could, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, your nose can consume too. And depending on what your nose is consuming, it can set something off, correct?
Right.
You also consume certain things with your ears, what you hear, and you also consume certain things with what? Your eyes. So basically what you consume affects your brain. Correct? Food. I'm going to give you an example. If I was to take my nails across this chalkboard right here, y'all would probably squirm. Now you can consume that with your mouth, but what would it affect? It would affect your nervous system, correct? Am I making sense? So what you consume in your body affects you. It sets off certain type of chemicals, which eventually affects your nervous system. Either way it go, whether it's bad or not, what's always functioning as your electricity. Whether something's bad, you know what I'm saying? Because that you're always on. Whether you're on for good or whether you're on for bad. So this is always running, the electricity. Am I making sense? This is always running. Once chemicals are consumed, it affects this. And this can ultimately control your what? Behavior. This can ultimately, your neural system, your nervous system can ultimately control your actions. Right? Because when you're nervous about something, you start to sweat. Right? You get butterflies in your stomach. That all deals with the nerve. Am I making sense? Now, it's bad enough African American people don't know their history. One of the things that helps with them not knowing their history and not knowing how to think like a person of African descent is the things that we consume. I would say 80% of the product in America is designed for Europeans and not people of color. So therefore, you have to watch what you consume, because there are chemicals in everything that can ultimately affect your nervous system, which can ultimately affect your behavior. I'm going to give you a good example. When I was younger, I had eczema. My doctor told me to use Dove soap. It's a moisturizing bar. Right? Well, what he didn't tell me was that moisturizing bar was designed for Europeans. It moisturizes Europeans well, but we have a little bit of a thicker skin and a tougher skin than Europeans. Our skin does something different in the sun than Europeans. So I had someone who was not a doctor, who was in the holistics, tell me, try shea butter. And if it doesn't, break you out, or if you don't have any effect of it, use that. Well, guess what? I've been using shea butter since I was like 20, and it works. Now, who do you know that use shea butter? Africans. I'm just saying, right? Now, in 2012, I see a lot of products that contain shea butter in it. And I was informed that about 12 years ago. More than that, 15 years ago. You understand what I'm saying? Am I making sense? It's up to you to do the research to find out what's good for your nervous system. What chemicals are good for your electricity. I'm going to give you a good example about electricity. A lot of African American women, they wear weaves. Right. Now, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with wearing weaves, but the type of hair that the average African American woman has, what's known as kinky hair, absorbs more energy than a European woman's hair. Did you know that? Not saying there's nothing wrong wearing weaves and doing your thing, but I would suggest that African American women sometimes should let their hair breathe.
The sun is good for it, I think.
The sun is good for what?
Kinkier. I don't know if my hair dries, my real hair dries when it's in sunlight.
I mean, yeah, but that's your electricity. That's going along exactly.
I agree. So I agree with that.
No, I'm not saying all the time. I understand it's hard to keep up natural hair because of the way society is. We on the go and things of that nature. But just try it every now and then. Nobody gotta know. You know what I'm saying? Just try it. Because these are the things that affect the way you think. Once you understand the function of the brain, how you think, and how your brain works, how your psychology works, you'll be a little bit more aware of the chemicals that go in your body. Because certain chemicals are not good once they meet other chemicals that's in your body. It can make you think a certain way. Just like we put nutmeg on French toast. But if you consume too much nutmeg, it'll get you high and it'll give you diarrhea. And it'll have the effect of what the drug ecstasy would have. A lot of people don't know that. There are other chemicals that you put in your body. You might put a little bit here, a little bit there, every day, and eventually it has more of a slow effect on your body. So when you get around 50, 60 years old, you see the effects of the things that you were doing when you were 20, because you've been consuming the same chemical over years and years and years. Sort of like smoking. Now what does this have to do with the African American community? A lot. Because of a lot of the things that we consume, they are not for our good. So as an African American person, we need to be aware when we look at the back of these products that we eat. Is this good for me? Is this not good for me? Should I eat this? Should I not eat this? Or I can eat this because it only has a little bit of this in it, or it has too much of this in it, and that's going to affect X, Y, Z. You see what I'm saying? It's certain chemicals that there are certain chemicals that affect a woman's hormones that you know not to intake. Am I right or wrong? Yes. Would you take something that has a lot of testosterone in it? Exactly. Would I consume something that has a lot of estrogen in it? No, I would hope not. You see? That makes sense, doesn't it? Well, why not? We need to be that way with everything. But more specifically, we need to be that way as people of African descent. To know what to consume and what not to consume. What's going to affect our nervous system. What's going to affect the chemicals in our brain. What's going to detour our electricity to malfunction. Got any questions, anybody? Got any questions? Am I making sense? No? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
So, I wish I had bigger chalk here. But basically, if I had to put everything on the board, we already know that psychology is the study of mental procession. Before we leave, I'm just going to or mental life. It is thought procession. Know that it's the trilogy of the mind. What's the trilogy of the mind? Amelia?
Cognition, emotion, and motivation, or knowledge, feelings, and desire.
There you go. Which will be knowledge. And knowledge is basically intake of information. Feelings. Which deals with what? Our emotions, right? And desires. And what does desires deal with? What motivates us? What motivates us? So I put motivation. When you're studying how you think, keep these in mind. Okay? Keep these in mind. What is the physical trilogy of psychology? What is the physical trilogy of the brain? We just talked about it.
Neurons, chemicals,
Okay.
electrical.
So we're gonna say the physical. We're gonna call this the physical trilogy. And what is it?
Neurons, chemicals, and electrical.
Okay, neural.
Neural.
I'm sorry. What's the other one? Chemical. And electrical. Electrical is what? It is the power that ignites the brain. Chemical deals with more understanding. We already got chemicals in our body, but it deals with what we what?
Consume.
What we consume. And what effects does it have on the chemicals that we already have in our body, that God put in our body? And neural deals with what?
Nervous system.
The nervous system. And the nervous system ultimately does what? Control
Behavior.
our behavior. Good job. I would even say about neural, I would even say our reaction to something. Our reaction to something. If everybody hear a loud bang, everybody would jump up, or everybody would go duck and hide if something was to sound like a gunshot, right? Because what people don't understand, I like to compare my mind to a city. It's always like 24-hour city. There's always something going on. When somebody pinch you, you get pinched, that sends a signal to your brain, and then it goes back to the actual pinch for you to go, ouch. Your brain sends a signal to your nervous system, and then you ultimately go, ouch. See what I'm saying? When you're dealing with how African American, or I should say, when you're dealing with your psychology as an African American person, keep these elements, keep this information in mind. When you come to this class, what is it on this board? What I give y'all?
Give us knowledge for it.
There you go. And I hope that knowledge gets you back on track as an African American person. So when somebody says something racial to you, or when something happens and you end up in a situation and now you're aware of who you are as a person, it's going to ultimately affect your what? Feelings about that situation. And hopefully, once I tell you who you are as an African American person, before you came to this class, you would see European fashion, and you would like European fashion. You would see European television, and you would like European television. European Western thought, that mentality, they've made it attractive. So we're attracted to it. So hopefully once you learn who you are and you learn about your own psychology, I'm hoping what to change.
Your desire.
Your desire to change. Maybe now when you see an African dress, it'll be a little bit more attractive to you because you know the history behind that African dress. Maybe instead of saying I want to go to Paris, if I had $2,000 or $3,000, you would say I want to go to Africa if I had $2,000 or $3,000. You see the difference? Right? Instead of me buying Paul Mitchell hair stuff, maybe you want to buy Carol's daughter's hair stuff. I'm just throwing that out. You know what I'm saying? Am I making sense? Because you're more aware of who you are. Alright? Maybe your desire will be to wear your natural hair instead of wearing #1 black Yaki or Remy or whatever the case may be. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, I'm just saying. Maybe your desires will change. Am I making sense? Because now you're aware, you have the knowledge, and your knowledge will ultimately control your feelings, and will ultimately control your desires. Keep these in mind. Got any questions? Anybody? Anybody got any comments? Any questions? No? Those are the things we didn't talk about last week. Because remember, before we talked about the things that affect us also, the weather, remember, the economy, family, friends, work, religion, and food. Any questions, any comments, you know?
The information you had on the board, like how has you gaining knowledge changed your desires?
How does it change my desire? Well, I wasn't believe it or not, I didn't like watching educational things before I found out who I was. I wasn't into education. I was what you call a C and D student. I was good at music. I would get A's in music. But when it comes to mathematics, when it comes to science, when it comes to history, when it comes to these things, I was not interested. But when I became aware of my culture, when I became aware of who I was and things of that nature, I became attracted to those things. When it taught me about who I was, now I don't even want to watch anything that's stupid. Like, you know, or make it a priority. If I'm just relaxing, of course, I've done everything I needed to do for the day as an African American man. I sit down and I watch some garbage, I don't care, but I had a complete day, you see what I'm saying? But we make it priority to watch garbage. Now, I'd rather watch a lecture. I'd rather watch something concerning history, you know? I would rather go to an event to hear a speaker speak on educational things than to go to the club. So I've totally turned around my desires. Does that answer your question? And it helped me also get a better understanding about how I view myself and how I treat myself. You know, before, I can eat McDonald's every day with no problem. But when I found out what McDonald's do to your brain and do to your body, I really can't mess with McDonald's no more. Making sense? But I didn't know that, because I didn't know what the effect. You know, they got all this stuff on the internet talking about McDonald's is bad for your health. Well, they need to talk about how McDonald's and stuff like that is bad for your mind. Forget your body, because some people genetically they were born a certain way. Some people was born big. Some people was born little. Some people was born tall. Some, you know what I'm saying? What does it do to this? Those chemicals. You know what I'm saying? So, anything else? Anything anybody want to address the next time I do a lecture? No? Any topics? I think what was on my mind last time was, I think I'm going to give y'all the timeline of history. I think that's what I'm going to try to really tap off into that. In other words, like I want to break down the kings and, you know, starting from the first dynasty all the way up until like how it is now. I think that'll be out cold because it's gonna explain how I got this way. And I think once you get a generalization of how I got this way, you maybe be able to understand more why I even have this class. When you see how things was the bomb back in the day, we was wearing gold and silver, and we had kingdoms, and they were building stuff, and I mean it was like heaven. And now we're like at the bottom of the totem pole. I think if you see that breakdown, I mean I can almost do it now. I mean just, you know, and I'm talking about like showing you guys, one thing I haven't done yet is showing you guys like pictures and have a slide and, you know, show you, you know, before we even, like, you know, like I was saying, King Narmer, starting from him, and then how he existed, he goes back to, I want to say 5,000 BC. And of course, you know, way over here will be Obama. You know, King Zozar, you know, I think y'all need to see that. You know, and then in the middle, you know, you got the Hyksos people, how they took over. And somewhere down here, you got Alexander the Great, he took over. And give you a brief, you know, idea of who these people were. These were black men. They even had one queen, Hatshepsut. You ever heard of her?
Yes.
She took over Egypt one time. You know, that was a woman who had to take over Egypt. You know what I'm saying? Y'all need to know that. And that's when your identity and what we just talked about psychology start to click with your genetic memory bank. Let me put this. I'm gonna say this before I close, because this is important. All right, I'm gonna say this before we close. Can somebody tell me what are genes?
Like our genetic makeup.
Genetic makeup. Okay.
They dictate how we look.
They dictate how we look.
To some people, how we act.
How we act, it dictates our behavior. So genes dictate our behavior, right? So let's deal with genetic behavior. You already know it determines how we look, right? But it also determines how we act. What if I told you you had what's called a genetic memory bank? How far do genes go back? How far do genes go back? Can't you look like your great-great-great-great-grandfather? Would you say that you could take on certain types of personalities of your great-great-great-grandfather and your great-great-great-grandmother? Would you say that? Yes or no? Well, that deals with your genetic memory bank. And this is why your history is important. Now, to my understanding, your genetic memory bank stretches back, it can stretch back thousands of years. You see where I'm going with this? It's a reason why black women are attracted to braids and hairstyles with braids now, and they were attracted to braids and hairstyles with braids 10,000 years ago. That has something to do with your genetic memory bank. There are people who market certain things to African American people because they understand about this genetic pool. Your genetic pool does not just consist of your physical attributes. It also consists of your behavioral attributes, your personality. Am I making sense to you? Check this out. You have a genetic memory bank. What's going on in the African American community right now is there is a case of amnesia. Information that we had stored in us that we can't quite remember. Usually somebody with amnesia, what does the doctor do? Let them see pictures, let their family come around. Am I making sense? So maybe they'll start to develop, and maybe they'll start to pull from their, not necessarily their memory bank, but we speaking just their memory bank, right? It would be stupid for the doctor to try to use pictures and family to come around for them to remember certain things if they didn't have a memory bank, correct? That would be stupid for them to use that, you know, that method, right? Well, I'm here to tell you, you have a genetic memory bank. And one of the reasons for this class is to offset amnesia that you have in your genetic memory bank. Maybe if I show you who you were, maybe if I show you where you came from, maybe if I show you your culture, we can eradicate amnesia. And things will start to make sense. And it'll connect with your genetic memory bank because you have genes that stretch back thousands of years. You are related to some of those people that were in Africa before slavery, during times when we were kings and queens. Maybe something will click. That's what happened with me. Something clicked.